I am Alan Barrell. I have the honor to be a professor. I'm working from my base in Cambridge, and I had a very wonderful career. Started as a biologist, worked in the health service, became a hematologist, and 6 years in clinical labs, doing great things. I enjoyed my hospital work. Then in the healthcare industry for 20 years, started as a salesman and became a chief executive through 17 years with a very great company, Baxter Healthcare, which is established in Spain, of course, and definitely spent a lot of time working in Spain on Baxter. After that, I became involved in teaching in the university, innovation, entrepreneurship, in charity work, and then did a venture capital fund of 70 million euros, all technology investments. That's all over and done with. Since then, I have been very engaged in early stage company development. I'm a business angel, and I'm a great believer in the commercialization of research, especially life sciences. And I have been for a number of years the chairman of the National Association of College and University Entrepreneurs in the UK. So I work a lot with students, young people, very connected in China. I've been there 20 times, working with Chinese universities and companies, and a lot in Finland, and happily, more recently, back in Spain, in Barcelona. I've done lots of work over the years with the companies sent to us by La Caixa, Risk. Yeah, at the university here in Cambridge, at the business school, we have a summer school, and La Caixa send many of their successful award-winning companies for a one-week program here. And in fact, there were 20 La Caixa supported delegates at the program this year. And I've kept in touch with some of those companies, and wonderfully, one of them, a company called Imucroc, which is in bacterial discovery in the food industry. One of my companies here, which is a Chinese company, helping European companies go to China, is working with Carlos Arias in Barcelona, who I met in Cambridge 3 years ago, and we are helping him get his company started now in China. So I've recently been to Barcelona to help launch the Innovation Forum. I'm back in touch with La Caixa and Santander, and was with a young man recently with a biotech company in Santander who we're trying to help in the UK. So busy and doing a lot of teaching and very much involved in alternative finance, not least crowdfunding. Well, in my days when I was a growing child and in my teenage years, I wanted to be a doctor. But we didn't have much money as a family, and I never made medical school, but I did make graduate school for biology and then became qualified in bioscience, in medical technology. So I became a, bio, a medical bioscientist working in hematology and blood transfusion in our National Health Service. And I did that for 6 years. So I have always been very, very passionate and very interested about medicine and the great discovery of medicine. So it was quite natural for me to stay in life sciences and move into a life science company. I became involved in companies that needed money and charities that needed money. And for example, we just formed in Cambridge the Cambridge Rare Diseases Network. And wherever you work with young companies, not least in bioscience, and wherever you work with charities that support healthcare, they need money. So I became very engaged in raising money. And raising money is not about accounting and finance primarily. It is about understanding the cause in which you believe and in finding the means to make a plan and convince other people to invest. So it became necessary for me to help raise money in order that the companies I was working with could succeed. And when we 2 years ago began to talk in Cambridge at the university, where I am at the Entrepreneurship Center, Entrepreneur in Residence here, when the discussion became active about a Center for Alternative Finance. I was very interested in that. So I was really into crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, impact investing in the very early days of it. And I'm very, very close to what is going on in the world of alternative finance. Well, that's a very good question, and you make me think deeply, but there is one period in my life which was the most fulfilling of all. And it was when I was working with Baxter Healthcare, a big healthcare company. And it was in the 1970s, so a long while ago. And at that time, my country, the UK, was not very good at treating patients with kidney failure. We were way down the European League table for treating people with kidney failure. Many people died because of lack of treatment and money. And Baxter at that time introduced a new way of treating patients, continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis, CAPD. And I led the program to introduce it to the UK, and it was a 3 or 4 year program. It took a lot of energy and effort, but it was a huge success. And it changed the whole profile of the way people thought about kidney disease in the UK. It made the government invest a lot more money, and the UK became one of the leading nations in terms of extending treatment for end-stage renal disease. So the CAPD program was a devoted period in my life. I was chief executive of the company, but we focused ourselves on changing the policy of the nation and the financing of healthcare in order to bring into the market a new form of treatment for kidney disease. And during that period, I got to work with a lot of the renal units and the patients and the nurses, and it was extremely fulfilling to see that change take place and to see the patients and hear them on this new treatment able to work and lead a more normal life. So I would say that was a fulfilling purple patch in my life. In Spain and UK, we have the same, let's call it a challenge, not a problem. The US is a very big market uh, domestically. That's one thing. So, and the venture industry is better established there. And traditionally, the American investors have invested on a different scale than in Europe. That has to change. Why would it cost less to develop a global healthcare company or life science company in Europe than in the USA? It wouldn't. It costs as much to truly develop next generation of big bio companies wherever you are in the world. So I think what we have to do is, first of all, in our own countries, we have to strengthen our position and be able to present our international company possibilities to investors worldwide creatively, perhaps more effectively. So we have to make the companies more investment ready. And I've been speaking in Barcelona about some of the programs that we could help with on what I call the Venture Academy approach, helping entrepreneurs become more acceptable to investors rapidly. In the UK, we're doing something very, very creative. We have formed a coordinated network called MedCity, which takes London and Cambridge and Oxford, three great centres of medical research, Cambridge University, Oxford University, Imperial College, University College, King's College in London, and helps them to work together. So we're saying that maybe if we work together, we can create as large a bioscience base as exists in Boston. If you take the Boston example in the US, Boston is a more significant example than Silicon Valley for life sciences. Yeah. And we're making progress with that. And what I believe is important is to strengthen these links between the great centers of life science in Europe, like Barcelona, Cambridge, and others, and bring together, rather than compete with each other always, those particular topics which will create great new companies. Now, we are very strong in the UK and in Barcelona, for example, in genetics, genomics, and that end of life sciences, next generation sequencing and stuff like that. You have created in Barcelona a world-class center in the Center for Genomics Regulation. The guy leading it, Luis Serrano, yeah, that's him, I think. Yeah, he's a world leader and he's well known here. And if we can connect better, and instead of competing for for money, for breaking up the available money for different uses in different countries, if we have a coordinated approach to specific topics like next generation sequencing and genomics, then we can build more companies that will attract international finance. We also do need to try and build a stronger venture capital industry in Europe. And we are moving towards that. I've been doing quite a lot of work in Portugal with Portugal Ventures. Well, I think this is a great time for bioscience generally. Um, Most of my companies that I'm involved with are life science. I have one very exciting one, Eagle Genomics, which is in bioinformatics, based on a campus here, Babraham campus, which is the biggest life science campus in Europe. But I was extremely excited with my most recent visit to Barcelona, where I'm working with some people who are into the genetics area, and they are at this wonderful new center you have, which is so brilliantly located beside the sea. What is it called? Um, the BRBB. And I was so impressed with meeting the people there and hearing about what has been achieved in a relatively short space of time. And of course, I was involved with the Center for Genetic Regulation. But what has been achieved in Barcelona generally in the Science Park, and especially in that center, is phenomenal. I think Barcelona is hugely well placed for future development in life sciences. It has focused initially on building one of the best research bases in life sciences in the world. They've recruited people from all over the world, and they have focused, first of all, on building a great science base. And now they will be in a position in the coming 10 to 20 years to move more into transformation of research into real products and services that will help people and will also generate a great deal of wealth for the region. So I do think it's quite impressive, and I'm very, very keen that we develop the relationship more closely with Cambridge, which is another great center for life sciences. But Barcelona's doing wonderfully well, and it's so interesting to see how the first truly dedicated bioscience crowdfunding platform, which is run professionally, I have seen, is in Barcelona, called Capital Cell. I think the issue is certainly in our country and in Portugal, where I've done a lot of work, and when I look at the companies coming from Spain, and the ones coming from La Caixa are the successful ones, that I think the building of teams around entrepreneurs and the assisting of the life science entrepreneur who may be very technologically brilliant but commercially not at all clever is something we have to learn how to do. And to enable the very brilliant creative entrepreneur to accept that there are other kinds of skills that need to be brought around he or she, and to help them do that, and also to make them much more aware of what the investor is looking for. Many technologically focused people talk techno speak, blah, 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 blah. Investors need something more. So I think we've made great progress here. We've made great progress in other European countries and in Spain. I mean, when you think of the things that have happened, and I keep coming back to La Caixa because they have done an enormous amount of work to help develop these young entrepreneurs into companies. But we still have more to do. And we have structured programs that we can deliver on investment readiness much more readily and frequently and learn from each other. So I do think we should be boosting those educational programs? Well, I think it comes back to two or three of the things we have already discussed, like the evolution of the entrepreneur and the building of the team. The entrepreneur may never become a smart businessman in the financial sense, but he can be a creative leader surrounded by smart business people. And so I believe that what I see emerging in Barcelona and what we have created to a more advanced degree in Cambridge, because we have been here doing it longer, much longer, we have been doing it 60 years, and in Boston and in Silicon Valley, is what I call the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I talked a lot about this in Barcelona when we had the launch of the Innovation Forum, because quite a lot of the people in the audience in Barcelona said, well, we don't feel we quite have the confidence, we don't feel we quite have the structure. We are very enthusiastic, but we are held a bit back from going forward because we're not quite so confident. And I believe there are gaps in the ecosystem there that can be filled. What do I mean by ecosystem? I mean, if I look in Cambridge at the number of mentors who are available, many, many, to help the young entrepreneur forward. If I look at the professional services, if I look at the accelerators and the incubators that are there, and the general atmosphere of great willingness to help the worthy entrepreneur to move forward, the ecosystem, including the premises and the availability of finance, is quite well developed. It needs more developing. And so I say that, going back to the Death Valley thing, we can prevent more of them going into it. First of all, by making sure that the wrong companies don't start. In other words, not every starting company will be a success. Maybe they don't have the right support. And so preventing them get to Death Valley is the first step. And an entrepreneurial ecosystem can help to do that. I'll give you two examples of things I've experienced lately. A brilliant young lady, a PhD in epigenetics in Cambridge, came to us and said, I have this great idea to develop a new diagnostic test for cancer. Maybe I should start a company. We worked with her, we looked at what she had. She has something very, very good. And we came to the view that she needed at least another year of research to develop her concept beyond the proof of concept stage before she formed a company. So we worked with her, we got her connected so she could get another research grant and have the money. We connected her with UK Cancer Research, who advised her. And so the ecosystem helped her to take a clear decision that for another year, I'm going to develop my idea to the next stage, and she had the money to do it. I'll give you another example that I presented at the Innovation Forum in Cambridge, a 14-year-old startup. Two guys founded a company. They said, we're going to develop a new way to do a blood culture, which won't need a lab, which won't need an incubator. It will be a little freestanding unit. And they developed a prototype. They raised some money, but they then fell into bad hands. They were badly advised. They went almost bankrupted. After 5 years, they were in desperate straits. After 6 years, they were almost dead. And one or two of us looked at what they had and saw that it was a really great technology, but that the market they were aiming at was probably not the best market to aim at first. So we've raised 3 million over the last 3 years for that company. And last year, it won the SME of the Year competition. It developed a product which detect and show bacteria being present in different fluids. But blood was the wrong place to start because of the regulatory problems and the time it takes. And it's a small market. We found much bigger markets for it. So I say there are ways of digging things out of Death Valley, but it's better to prevent them getting in there in the first place. And those two examples are quite interesting examples of the difference. Well, the first thing that I look for as an investor has to be the people. It Okay, the technology is necessary. It has to be a believable technology, and I have to believe it will be translatable into a product. But most of all, it's the people. It's the people that make the difference. And when we talk about the ecosystem in Cambridge and the developing ecosystem in Barcelona, it's the people that make the difference. It's the people. When you meet them, you just know that these are people who are going to make something happen. So when I look at a group that wants money, I have to believe the people will deliver at the end of the day. Now, that doesn't mean I see a complete team, which I rarely see. In fact, I never see. But if the people in the team are prepared to admit that we have gaps in the team, which we need to fill, then I feel comfortable with them. And so I need to feel the people are honest, they know what they're doing, they know where they can't achieve things, where they need help, they listen. The team. It's the team for me is the number one. I think it can have a very major impact. We know from work of the World Bank that crowdfunding generally in the developing world alone in a few years' time could be 100 billion. And when I look at what's happening in China, the whole area of alternative finance, including peer-to-peer lending, reward-based, donation-based equity crowdfunding, invoice trading, impact investing. I'll come back to impact investing in a moment. But I think crowdfunding in life sciences can play a very big part in the very early stages, early stage seed fund and a growth fund. And if we can also now develop alternative finance in a bigger way, we will strengthen ourselves more. And Europe has been pretty good on alternative finance. UK has been very strong. The US has been a bit slow on equity crowdfunding, for example. So I believe we're at a time where if we work together, we can achieve a very great deal. I am very engaged in the world movement on impact investing. And impact investing is the next big subject in alternative finance. And I can send you some stuff on impact investing. What do we mean by impact investing? We mean investing not only for a financial return, but for an impact on the environment, society, healthcare. And the next generation, or the current and emerging generation of very wealthy people, are definitely moving their minds towards impact. They're saying, yeah, okay, I may invest in your fund, but I need to know what impact will the investment have. Okay, you say I'll get a 20 or 30% return, fine. But I have choices. I can invest in your fund, but I want to invest in a fund where I can see a real impact.